YouTube, what is good? It's your man Ribs from Doing Film Things. Every single week I drop a new video about film photography, so if that's your thing, definitely go ahead and subscribe. So a couple weeks ago I headed out to the south coast of England for a little getaway. Did lots of hiking and sightseeing and all that outdoor stuff. So on my last day there, I actually brought out a roll of Cinestill 50D. I had this roll sitting in my fridge for a couple months and I really didn't know what to do with it. So I figured last minute, you know what? If we're gonna go hiking, the weather's nice, everything's looking good, let's shoot this roll and let's see what we get. Before I give you any more thoughts, let's check out some footage and some images from that day. And don't forget, stay tuned to the end of this video to check out my darkroom print from one of these photos. All right, let's go.
It's hot.
Yeah, are you jealous you don't have a bathing suit right now?
I feel like I'm in Jurassic Park right now. It's all these ferns and like woods and then this coastal stuff. It's pretty epic. Still haven't seen a dinosaur yet though. So, I don't know. Maybe I'm not in Jurassic Park.
My first impressions of this film is just wow. I was very shocked at how amazing this film renders colors, dynamic range, and basically anything from an appearance perspective. The first thing you see when you look at these images is just so much strong, bold color. I wouldn't say this film is overly saturated in a bad way. I just think it really delivers a beautiful level of color, especially in my images with the blues and the greens. They just pop right out of the image. I was in the South Coast where you have beautiful blue water, and then right on the coast as well, you have beautiful green texture from the farmlands and kind of the rolling hills. So this film just fantastically handled all of that. These strong colors still felt very true to life, and I really think they just depicted what I remember the scene looking like. In terms of dynamic range, I was also really impressed. My scenes when I was hiking here were very kind of contrasty because you did have this big, strong sun, although there were clouds kind of in and out, diffusing the light just a bit. And then you had a ton of foregrounds with lots of color and action. So in some of these scenes where the sun was behind the foreground, you were still able to get good detail on the foreground, which is basically in slight shadow, while still getting some also good detail in the sky from the diffused clouds. I was very impressed to see that I had good texture in the sky, but then also good color and good dynamic range in my shadows as well. Even though color negative film generally can handle this stuff fairly decently, I did see a particular improvement when using this film over a lot of the other films that I use, especially budget films. So that's a plus for this film, and it was great to see how well it could handle all of these landscapes that I threw at it, where the sun was quite strong and the foreground still needed a bit of help given that it was in shadow. Of course, if you have a scene where there's just complete direct sunlight with no clouds at all, it might get a little tough, especially if you underexpose or overexpose. But if you get your exposure right, this film definitely lets you play with it just a bit to even it out a bit to your liking. This was apparent when scanning and when printing. In both options, I was able to bring back some of the life in the shadows and give myself a nice, more even product. One of the really interesting things about this film is the grain. So this is low ISO film and it's very high level quality film, which means very, very fine grain. It's actually kind of difficult if you zoom in to see very obvious grain the way you would with a lot of other films that you're more used to using. Especially in printing, it was even there very difficult to find some grain. So why would you use this film? Why would you use this over any of the other film stocks that you're probably used to using already? I don't have a really good answer to that question, honestly. I do really like the output from this film, but it's tough to see, especially at its price point, why I would choose it over something like Ektar 100 or maybe Portra 160. Both of those other films I think are kind of in the same league in terms of use, especially because they're lower speed films. And this one, I really love the colors that I get. I think ultimately the look is probably what you're gonna pay for if you really wanna use this film. But in terms of practicality and kind of just like overall fit, it is really hard to say why you wanna choose this film over some of the other options. I would say this film kind of stacks up very nicely against Ektar 100. I think they both would be really good at handling landscapes and any image that has lots of color, some good kind of sunlight with some clouds and that kind of thing. Both of these films really push the scene and give you something that's still true to what you remember seeing with your own eyes, but kind of punches it up just a bit more for some drama and just for some beautiful color. So I think those two films match up nicely, but when it comes to Portra 160 or even Portra 400, I think those have their clear use, whereas Cinestill 50D doesn't really have a clear use. It really is just up to you when you think the time is right and the cost is worth the scene that you're gonna photograph. Many of you might balk at the price, and I totally get that. That's perfectly understandable, but this is very quality film, so you shouldn't expect it to be cheap. But is it too expensive? That's only up to you to decide. So I know you're all waiting to see some print, so here we go. This is the print that I made earlier today from one of my Cinestill images. I just love how this print looks. There's so much color in here, and the blues pop, the greens pop. I get some texture in the sky, and I was able to fill in a little bit of the shadow that was on the side here with some dodging. And overall, I'm just very, very happy with this print. I think Cinestill, whether it's 800T or now 50D, is just so much fun to print in the darkroom because of how bold the colors typically are. I haven't had a bad time printing anything from Cinestill yet, so really look forward to doing a lot more. And I think this is actually one of the reasons why I would buy this film again. I think for the perfect scenes shot on Cinestill 50D, you're gonna get really, really strong color and really beautiful, bold results, which for landscapes, I kind of prefer. I know other people prefer less saturated and perhaps less contrasty and some other looks, and that's totally fine. But for me, I think I prefer this kind of look. Overall, I really, really like this film. I don't think I'm gonna be shooting it all the time or very often, in fact, but I'm definitely gonna keep a little reserve so that when I have just the right conditions, especially if I'm going on a trip, definitely gonna make sure to bring one of these rolls with me. I just love the results. So I think there's definitely a place in my kind of film arsenal for this specific film. I can't help now but wonder what Kodak Vision 3 50D looks like. It's kind of the obvious question to ask when you look at Cinestill 50D. You wonder, well, what's the difference between that and Kodak Vision 3 50D? Haven't tried that myself yet, but as you can tell with some of my other videos where I'm testing some of the Vision 3 stuff out, I'm definitely gonna give that a try at some point. So I don't know when I'm doing that, so stay tuned, but definitely gonna be looking into that. All right, y'all, that's what I got for this week. If you like this video, please go ahead and leave me a like. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe. Until the next video, y'all, peace.